Welcome to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him at gods5minutes@gmail.com. Now, here's Ed Wilson with God's 5 Minutes.
Hello, friends. The book of Joshua opens with this. Now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses my servant is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. In these verses, we begin to see how the Israelite saga passes seamlessly from the leadership of Moses to that of God's next chosen vessel, Joshua. It turns away from the lonely mountain grave to the bustling camp and the new leader. No man is indispensable to God's work, for though the instruments of his use change, the great master craftsman merely lays aside one tool to take up another. The loss of Moses does not paralyze the march of the nation. It only leads to the ringing command, therefore arise and go over this Jordan. This change does not mean Moses is simply forgotten, consigned to dust, and left to lie there. For when calling his name, the narrative lovingly repeats his honored title, the servant of the Lord. He is forever enthroned as the man to whom the promise of conquest was committed, the example of the highest experience of God's companionship, and the voice by which Israel received the law. To his place on earth is now vacant, and Joshua, at God's call, steps manfully into it, receives the same great promise, is assured of the same presence, and is to obey the same law. The change of leaders is great, but nothing else has changed, and even this inevitable leadership change is not so great as faint hearts in their sorrow may feel, for the real leader lives, and Moses and Joshua are each only the trumpets by which he issues his commands and consolations to the needy nation. Joshua's first command was a trial of his faith, for Jordan was in flood. And how was he to get this great host, new to his leadership, across? Fords were impassable and bridges there were none, to say nothing of watchful eyes on the other bank. The command gave not a hint of how he was to accomplish his task. He has Jehovah's command to do it, and Jehovah's promise to be with him, and that's all. But that's enough. We too can be called upon to face situations in life when those on whom we have relied can help no longer, and we are often called to move by faith when we cannot see how the hurdles before us can be overcome. The one essential to success is that we're certain the path before us is the one ordained by God. When the Israelites moved forward to the crossing, looking out over the broad raging flood which would surely drown any who dared to brave it, the Lord instructed the priest bearing the ark with its twin staves through the rings on its side to march into the current. And as they did, just as waters had parted before Moses, they did once again to make Jordan's crossing simple. In just this manner, God is pleased today to go before his children to winnow their path. This is true of temporal decisions we may be called upon to make, which house to buy, which career path, things of that sort. But is it especially true of obeying all spiritual commands? If God called you, rather, to ask someone's forgiveness, do not be deterred by the fears and flood of obstacles Satan may seem to thrust across the path. If you're called to give up something of the world with its unholy passions, know that when the enemy comes in against you like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him. God will make a way for you and me to live holy lives if we follow in the path his hand traces. God completed his commission to Joshua by showing him the boundaries of the land that was to be the inheritance of his people. Well, this too is characteristic of the way God deals with us as he leads us into the gifts and wisdom of his Spirit. He will set before us a vision of the lofty peaks of noble and holy life, such as Jesus did when he told his disciples, Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Joshua followed what God had called him to be, and he was successful. Have you talked to God today?
You have been listening to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him by email at godsfive-minutes@gmail.com. Tune in next time to hear more encouraging thoughts from God's Word on God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson.